All right, what is going on today? So, in today's video, I got to chat with Jose Dorantes, and he's a guy that I met actually at a job that I used to have. We were coworkers, and since then, he's kind of focused his studying in terms of university on dealing with the mental health of the youth, the individuals who end up getting into troubled areas in their lives and may have to deal with the criminal justice system. So, I was super interested in hearing about that when we began talking recently. So I decided to have an actual full-length conversation with the guy and be able to bring that to you as well so you can listen to it as well. So without further ado, I'm not going to talk too much. If you enjoy this kind of content, thank you so much for enjoying it and listening to it, watching it, whatever. But one thing I will ask is that you do subscribe to this channel, you do hit that notification bell to hear other conversations just like this one, as well to just maybe refer to a friend, maybe somebody that's kind of struggled in the past, is struggling right now, or just wants to carve their life into a better direction. I won't talk anymore in this introduction. Let's jump into it. All right, bang, we are recording. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you decide to listen to this at. And if you decided to listen to this, thank you. Today I'm here with Jose Dorantes. I hope I got that pronunciation proper.
Nailed it.
Perfect. So I'll kind of give like a little history. So Jose and I used to work together. We were kind of just working together at the same company, and then we ended up being at the same location for about a month, and then we were at neighboring locations, so we did end up getting to chat quite a bit. But it was pretty cool because I watched you grow from like an entry-level position to being promoted into management and helping develop teams yourself. So it was pretty sick. But I'll kind of give you the mic and just give you the opportunity to like tell people what you're about now, what you're doing now, like where they could find you on social media if you want to throw that plug in. But I'll pass the mic over to you, Jose. Why don't you give people a little introduction to what you do?
Perfect. Well, I appreciate the intro and everything. Like currently what I'm doing, I'm just, trying to figure out what I'm doing if like my studies and such are now. So we're not really focusing on the work ethics part of it. We're looking at more, I guess, more social media and such, and like connecting with, people like you, trying to like engage more and get more meaningful conversations that I can learn and also share my experiences. But yeah, we're just currently just in university right now, just trying to learn more about like the things that I'm passionate about with mental health and youth. And also, I mean, like I'm slowly starting to get more into trying to like advertise more about mental health, like just like as you're doing. And that's why like I've been trying to post more social media with regards to, more awareness. But if it's like, if people want to hear about it more or maybe want to connect with me, like my social media is there. All they got to look up is Jose Dorantes and then underscore on Instagram. And there we go. That's it.
Beautiful, man. And so when we first met, like we were just kind of chatting, you were studying like criminology on a pretty broad spectrum. And then recently you've shifted to focus a little bit more on the mental health aspect of what happens with youth and when they do get involved in like the criminal justice system and kind of what happens there. So like break down like what made you interested in shifting the focus from like a broad spectrum into like actually wanting to zoom in on this kind of area or this realm.
Yeah, like when I was like first like starting like my studies, like I kind of had a broad idea of what I wanted to do at the time. And then I was actually during when I was used to work at like the old company that I actually got to interact with this younger individual, and I think he was probably like 18 or so, maybe 17, maybe barely just turned 18. And then he told me that like he was really trying to get into this area of a lifestyle, which was fitness. And it was just because he was trying to be, trying to get away from the bad type of things, such as like, drug use and like violence and everything. And I thought that was, really like deep and like kind of like emotional, because I was like, okay, so they're trying to use something to get away from this. And I was really curious. And that's when I started asking questions. I'm like, what did you go through and such? And why are you trying to do this in life? And then it really made me interested, and it kind of made me reflect on some of my personal experiences, and realizing at the time I didn't really have those support services such as like what he said as well. So it just made me very like engaged in wanting to learn, and also maybe trying to be a one of those support services that, like, can understand what youth are going through, and also try to give them some understanding and maybe like a light to their tunnel, just because a lot of the times people aren't engaged, like they don't have guidance in their lives, like some don't have parents, some don't have anyone to rely on. So that just made me very passionate about wanting to study like with youth and their mental health progress.
Yeah, like what do you think? Because it's such a common trend, and I'm sure like you guys probably cover this in what like the courses that you take, but like what do you think draws youth towards like kind of that area? Because I mean, growing up, I kind of almost was drawn into a lot of bad crowds. I was drawn into a couple of pretty rough crowds, and I mean, luckily I did have like a little bit of mentorship, and I did have good support in my family, so that I was able to distance myself from it just enough, that it didn't impact me too rough, other than just being able to like observe a lot of my friends go down some pretty terrible paths. But what do you think it is that like draws like adolescents to, or like teenagers or children to these types of crowds? Like how come this happens in the first place? Do you guys cover that at all?
Yeah, there's a lot of like courses that really dive into the whole like depths of it. There's no, I guess, one like catch-all type of thing that says this is why they do it. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
all subjective to like people's experiences, but like the
Mm-hmm.
most common trends that have been, I've learned and have been discussed and that have been shared with me by other youths, it's generally they're looking for social acceptance. They're looking for somewhere where they can feel themselves. So maybe in the usual like norms of society, what they like, what they want to do, they're not. It's not like allowed or so. Or it's taboo. So they look for those groups or like individuals who are like-minded or will be willing to support their type of behavior. And a lot of the times during those interactions, that's when people change, and then they start resorting to other things. And another common one in which I've personally myself experienced, and I've seen so many others of my like friends and family go through, it's just a mental and social escape. Like their regular lifestyle and such, like all the stress and everything, it just adds up to the point where they just want to get some sort of, I guess, social or mental high in which they can feel like joy and excitement.
Yeah, man, that makes sense. Because it's like almost a coping mechanism. Like wow, in like kind of what my takeaway from what you just said is like perhaps they've developed like a couple of bad coping mechanisms or not so helpful coping mechanisms, and then when they kind of feel like stigmatized because of that, or they're distanced, I feel like maybe because of that, and then they do just kind of gravitate more towards like a crowd that would either be partaking in that coping mechanism as well, or just more accepting of it. I feel like, is that kind of like what you're getting at?
Yeah,
So like I have
exactly.
a good understanding.
Exactly. They're just trying to find people who are like-minded in like activities and coping. And it's like pure influence. Once you find a group who does it and they influence you, you're going to want to do it.
Bang. Wow, yeah. That's huge, man. Because that's so true. Like anytime I find that maybe I'm not in the crowd that I want to be in, or I'm partaking in activities that just really aren't helping me as much as like I feel like they should be. Like I feel like that's part of it, is like you just kind of gravitate towards other people that are doing similar things or feeling similar ways even.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like, I mean, like I could say this for other things, but like nobody likes to be the odd one that sticks out in a group.
Hmm.
So they're always going to want to like assimilate so that way they feel like they're fitting in with others.
Yeah, man. And so obviously uh it's a pretty heavy topic, and it is really like almost not controversial, but it's really difficult to pinpoint like solutions for it. But Like, what do you think, like, just off the cuff, like, what do you think is like a good solution for someone that feels like they're maybe stuck in a bad social circle, or they're stuck in bad habits? Like, if they're going down the wrong path, like, what's kind of like the best, like, quick advice? I guess, like, what did you help that gentleman with that you spoke with at our old job?
Well, like, yeah, like, I get what you mean with like the controversy. Like, I shouldn't be the one who says, this is the solution. But like, from my personal opinion, from what I've noticed and what helped him out, was it as hard as easy as it sounds, it's extremely difficult. But realistically, you just have to find that strength inside of yourself to be able to just completely either begin anew or just cut off those like negative stimulus, like whether it be your friend group or drugs or whatever it may be for them. And in his case, yeah, and then you just find something that gives you that joy or replacement of time that you would have done doing set activity. So for him, like, I won't get into details for him just because I feel like
Yeah.
it was more personal for him, but in his sense, it was a social aspect at a certain time of day. And what really helped him really sort of strive, like getting away from that, was that's when he would come into the gym. And if he didn't come in, he would personally want me or somebody to just call him or even just drag him out of wherever he is and just bring him to the gym. So that way he was distracted by using something that's, a healthy like coping method, which is exercise, and which I believe, and you probably saw it, it's an extremely helpful thing. So I really think just finding that replacement.
Yeah, man. I'm a pretty firm believer that humans are meant to move. So, like, however you have fun moving, you should try and do as often as possible. That's usually like the number one advice I give for people that are just like kind of sedentary or sitting in their room depressed. But it's not, yeah, it's such a difficult thing to say, because you're right, man. Like, it's so easy to say, like, oh, if you're just like sitting in your house all day, go and move. And it's like it's common sense, and it's like scientifically backed. Like, we have all these facts and evidence, and it seems so simple to just like go for a walk or go for a jog or even just stretch outside in the sun if we have a beautiful day like we do today. But then it's so hard to actually like implement and practice. Like, I've even been there myself. Like, it doesn't always seem like it, because if you look at like my Instagram stories, I'm always kind of posting like going for a bike ride or a workout at the gym. But even I've like experienced times where I'm like, man, I don't want to do this. Like, it just sucks. And it's kind of weird. And I don't mean to like kind of start this off on just like kind of a darker mode like this, but I just feel like it's such a difficult thing, like, because we speak about it in such a simple way. It's like just go to the gym, but that's a really difficult feat for some people to achieve, right?
Yeah, and like I completely get it. Like, I've also been in those like positions. Like, yeah, and even for me, the same thing. People see my posts and my stories, and they see me like going out to places, hiking and such, but like, or going to the gym all the time. But it's like, it's not always a simple thing. Like, it's sometimes you get those days, or sometimes for some people weeks, where you're just like, I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to just lay in bed and just do nothing. And then it's, it happens. It's hard for some people.
Yeah, man. It definitely is. Some people like it lasts months. I've even had periods where like there's different like aspects of my life that will just kind of, once I figure one out, then there's like another area in my life where I start to struggle, and it just kind of lasts for months, where I have this feeling like something's not right. Oh, maybe it's my nutrition, maybe it's like how much I'm moving, maybe it's how much time I'm spending with my family, and it's kind of just like a consistent balancing act, I feel like.
Yeah, and like for me personally, I can completely agree with that as well. Like, I'm always shifting. Like, if I'm good in one area, then I feel distracted and not feel like I'm not doing something in the other area of life, and it's just constantly moving through the motions of it. So it's like there's always something that needs to be addressed, from what I feel like. And like, I've also noticed that's definitely the case for like people I've spoken to, that and I've tried to understand. It's like this cycle that they can't figure out.
Mhm. It almost like kind of highlights the notions that you always hear. Like, I didn't even mean to come to this conclusion right now, but I'm just kind of seeing it. But it kind of highlights like the notion of it is just like a journey. It's a balancing act. Like there's no like end goal. There's never going to be a time where, like every single area in your life is concrete, 10 out of 10, like just perfect. Like I feel like it's always kind of like a consistent balancing act. Like, and that's kind of what life like truly is. And it is tiring, but it's also rewarding when you are able to, hit the buckets that you need to hit. And when I mean that, like by that is like, if you were to like break down all the important things in your life, like spending time with loved ones, working, moving, eating properly, sleeping properly, and then like maybe whatever hobbies you have personally. Like I feel like those are, I don't know if I'm missing anything, but I feel like those are pretty much like the most important things for me, at least. Like I feel like it's a consistent like journey of just kind of balancing that. And then once you are able to achieve like a certain level of each area, then it's like a super rewarding feeling, I find. And like sometimes it doesn't last long, but sometimes it does stick with you for quite a while, right? Sometimes, yeah, it's such a funny balancing act, man.
Yeah, and like I've kind of like the way I like what I've described that from like, those experiences of, you're just kind of balancing. Like a lot of people who are like know me personally close, like I always use this metaphor. It's like you're just kind of strapped in on this roller coaster of life, and there's no way of getting out until you reach the end of that coaster, in which case, that's it. You're done. You've enjoyed your ride, and then that's it. You're done for the day. But like, yeah, like it's just constantly like you always got your highs and you always got your lows, but like it's always this balance of where, it's not always going to be just a flat line, because in that case, then it's not really a roller coaster in a sense. You're just kind of cruising by. But then again, if you're just cruising, you never really get to experience those great moments, and then you never get to grow from your low moments in life.
Yeah, man. And if you're someone like me who's like super terrified of roller coasters, you spend the entire ride just being anxious in anticipation for what may come. And then by the time it's over, you're like, that was it. Like I was so anxious the whole time for the next thing that I didn't even get to enjoy any of it.
Yeah, and like it's like I relate with that. Like I despise roller coasters, but like, and that's where that like anxiety you'll just see it burst. But then after, as soon as you're done that ride, and you just feel so guilty about it, just being like, I could have enjoyed this moment in time. And that's why I really think like I really enjoy this metaphor of like it's a roller coaster, because that's where the whole concept of like anxiety comes into play, and where it's like, you're trying to do something that others think is fun, but you just can't, and there's like that mental block. And then once you do it, it's like you just feel terrible about it, and you're feeling like, I wish I could have felt like this.
Yeah, man. That is already my takeaway from this already, because like the second you even say roller coaster, I feel anxious, man. Like I am so terrified of heights. It's like my biggest fear ever. And like I truly have never been on like a full size roller coaster. I'll be 100% honest, man. Like I've only ever been on like the small ones. I've never been on like a full sized one. I've never done a loop de loop. I've never done like those massive drops. I've never done that because I'm just so terrified of it. So when I hear you say like it is like a roller coaster, that's true, because I know I've been on similar experiences, and like the entire time I'm doing them, I just feel anxious. I'm like, man, like I know there's going to be a really big height, or I'm going to be like uncomfortable in certain areas. I'm going to get that weird feeling in my stomach. Some people love, but I don't like that. And I feel like if I were to be able to do that, once I got to the end, I would be like, man, it's over. Like I just, like the whole time was panicked about the next thing, and then it just didn't come. And like I should have enjoyed the ride like everybody else. Like I love that metaphor, man. That's so sick.
It's just something like, I guess, yeah, I don't know. I learned it like very early in life from like, I guess, like a support like provider. And then I was just like, hey, that resonated with me. Cause yeah, I completely hate roller coasters, but like every now and then, I'll give it a shot and then hopefully try to enjoy it. But it's just something I've noticed that just always sat well with me.
Yeah, man. Just like the anxiety for me that surrounds roller coasters, that is a perfect analogy, man. So thank you for that already.
Of course.
Bang. Good morning, dude. What a great way to start.
Right?
What a sick way to start, dude. That's really
10 a.m.
awesome. Yeah, we're just closing in on 10 a.m. here. Why don't we just kind of chat? Like, what did you get up to this morning before we did this?
Well, I got to start up my day early, get ready, eat that breakfast, go to the gym. And like, that's like my, in a way, like my meditation or my paradise, because it's like my, it's not only it's a physical getaway, but it's like a whole mental and spiritual port where you're like, it gives you like a sense of joy and like happiness when you're there. So that was mainly my day, just getting the gym kind of out of the way, but also starting off on a good note.
Yeah, man. I had a pretty similar morning as well. Just kind of got my workouts done because I have to get my workout in. For me, like I'm super anxious if I don't work out. So I got my workout done and then I just had some breakfast, just showered up. So I'm pretty much in the same boat as you. Do you have like so it's September. School's
Yeah.
starting up, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or have you been in school over the summer or like what's kind of school looking like for you?
I mean, school was during the summer, so that was an interesting experience, if everything being online and such, that was different. And then
Yeah.
yeah, school is starting next week on the 8th, so we got that look forward to again.
Yeah, man. And like without going into like the politics or the media or anything like that, like how did you find like doing school online? Like just like that kind of like how did you find that?
Uh, at first, when I heard about it, I was like, "Oh, sick! I can just stay in my PJs at home and like, and just enjoy my own privacy of my own bedroom or my kitchen and such." But like, it's not to the point until like I realized after maybe a few weeks of it of being in summer courses online that and I've noticed and I've talked with a lot of people, it sucks like because you lose an entire portion of like what university was and like class in general. And I could see the same for like, middle schools and high schoolers and anybody in general. You lose that social aspect of like, interacting with others, being in person and learning in front of a professor because everybody can just watch online, but just feels like you're watching a YouTube video or something that's not personal and geared to you. So it's been tough. Like it's definitely not the same. And I've noticed my lack of motivation and drive, it has been affecting my studies just because, it's you lose one thing and then, it kind of is like a Jenga tower. It kind of brings it all down.
Yeah, man. I have no idea how people do that. For the past couple years I've really wanted to like I had this notion of I want to quit my job and just kind of work from my computer, work from home. And I'm realizing that after like trying that for a couple years, that is like the only thing that kind of kept me through going through high school or, I didn't finish college, but like just like going through like the motions of, going to school, whether it be like my first like couple years of college or high school, like the only things that, let me be somewhat happy and somewhat successful in that is like the social interaction, what you're talking about because I like there was so many times where I would leave a class and I would just feel completely lost. Like I didn't even absorb anything that was in that class until like I would like ask maybe like one or two other peers in my class and be like, hey, what do you think of this? Because I was completely lost. And then they either understand it and be able to explain it to me, or maybe they were lost as well and I didn't feel as bad and we could ask the teacher questions together. Like it just kind of, having that ability to just kind of chat with other people, hang out with other people, see them smiling, or be able to ask questions. Like I feel like that was like one of the only things that like let me push through that.
Yeah, and like I would say the same for me. Like if I was just completely lost, I would be more than happy to just like it would be kind of nerve wracking just being like, oh, I'm gonna just ask a complete stranger. But at that point, like you really get to see how many other people are also in the same boat, being like, I have no idea what was just said, or they're just too shy to ask a question themselves. So like once you got that group, and then you build connections, and then you got like a little study group. So it's definitely something I enjoyed from like, my studies. So definitely missing that part. And it's a lot harder online.
Yeah. So moving into this new semester come September, like it's all online classes again.
Yeah, basically they're trying to limit every bit of like actual like on campus interaction really.
Dang, man. And
Yeah.
so, like, I feel like no matter how we feel about it, this kind of is probably how it's going to be for a little bit.
Mhm.
And it's going to be difficult. Like, what do you think? What kind of like techniques will you use, or what kind of coping mechanisms will you use to kind of push through this plateau? Like, this kind of like, it almost seems like not a roadblock completely, but like a little bit of a speed bump.
Yeah, and like I think that's a perfect analogy. Like it's not a thing that's completely stopped my, my journey and such. Like it's an annoyance, but it's an annoyance I can cope with and manage along my way. But like something that has worked well for me and I've kind of noticed with others is like, not being a stranger to your like classmates, like even if they're online, sometimes just a simple like chat in the Zoom call or something, just saying something quickly and then seeing if others resonate with you or if they have questions, then you just take that conversation privately, or even just making like little just study groups, whether it be your own Zoom calls, if they want to meet in person, like just trying to make that step to socialize in whatever possible means, it really helps getting through it.
Yeah, man. I'm just thinking about like me in a classroom setting, and I'm always kind of like, I'm either like super focused and like dialed in, and I'm like listening to kind of like my teacher, professor, and I try my best to take notes, but I'm a little bit more of like an auditory learner. But I'm just kind of thinking about the way that I am when I'm distracted and I'm like kind of chatting with like people or whispering a joke over to somebody or writing something down and showing somebody my paper. Like, I just feel like being a class clown sometimes might be either also like more difficult or more easy when it's all online, because you could just be like texting people funny jokes, or we used to use Zoom at our old job, and I would always like kind of text my buddies while we're on the call, try and make them laugh in front of the teacher, in front of the Zoom call. So it's I feel like that'd be like a different realm, man, going to school doing that.
Yeah, it's a complete different switch. And like, I've noticed too, it's like it's easier to like goof off, and like if you have a friend in that class and you see them in that like Zoom call, that little box and on the screen makes you laugh, because then you're like trying to distract them and make it visible to everybody else. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's hard, and it's also kind of funny at the time, like because I would have never expected an point in time in my life where I'm learning and then paying tuition just to be online on a Skype call or something, and just being able to text whatever I want, and then or if I want to make maybe a noise, or like even just like maybe change the background on my Zoom call, that just gives me some sort of joy.
Yeah, man. So has tuition changed at all because of like the product that they're giving you has changed a little bit, right? Because you're not getting that social interaction. You're not getting maybe like that one-on-one time with a teacher or professor that you could kind of, after the class, like go up to them and chat with them after. Like, I feel like because everything's online, like the product that they're giving you, because it kind of is a business, right? But like, I feel like it's changed. Like, has tuition changed? Do you see like it changing at all, or?
It's something that's really controversial, and like I completely despise it, but like they've just kept it the same. Like tuition, you'll pay exactly as if you're attending on like in-person class, and a lot of people aren't really happy about it, just because it's not the same. Like learning something in person, it's like it's like when we used to attend these like Zoom calls. Like sure, they were like handy learning like things online by like maybe like that upper management team, but like when they actually came in person, that's where you really got to see whether you could polish up your skills, the more personal. So it's been the same. It's like as if they're trying to give the same product, and it's not really resonating with a lot of people. And also like tuition, there's been some small tuition like increases, just because now they have to consider the whole concept of teachers need to buy like technology, they need to buy services now in order to like record and make sure, because I believe Zoom has this privacy thing that with like the university, so they need to then pay a premium service and everything like that. So there's been small increases.
Yeah, even with like the Zoom calls that I do, I've noticed like the free version of Zoom, which is like what I use for this. It like one restriction that there is like if you have more than one person in a conversation, then they limit you to 40 minutes. So
Mm.
like if this wasn't just me and you, if there was one other person here, I'd have to stop my recording pretty quick because you and I have already been talking for 39 minutes. So like that's like one of the restrictions. So I could see that because if I wanted to lift that, I'd have to pay for the service, right? But right now I'm just kind of reaping the benefits of the free one. And this is a one-on-one conversation anyway, so it's not even impacting us.
Exactly. Yeah.
But obviously, like when you have like an entire class, then it's a different story. It's a completely different story. You can't just like end the call and start a new one and hope that everyone connects perfectly and seamlessly again, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's sick, man. And so like what's kind of like your end goal with like the education that you're going through right now? Like what do you see yourself doing after you graduated?
Like personally, like I want to say like I'm very goal centered and I kind of have an idea of what I want to do, but it's one of those concepts that I haven't really wrapped my head around necessarily because for the longest time, and a lot of people have known, I really wanted to work in some part of the government, whether it be legislation or like even enforcement. But as current events occur and everything like that, it really makes me reflect and change my ideas and such. And I guess my new area like of interest of where I've kind of noticed my passion is more prominent is that whole mental health and like youth assistant programs. So almost like in a sense like I've looked into it and like we have something here and it's basically like it's the anti-drugs and gangs unit in it's somewhat involved with the police, but it's its own separate thing where it's just like youth services and it's only specifically dealing with youth at risk. So that's something where I would like to reach my end goal in.
Yeah, that'd be sick. I know there's like so many jobs in that field, and I've met even like a couple people that work in like similar to what you're saying, either on like a larger scale or a smaller scale. Like I know a buddy of mine that used to go to the same gym as me a long time ago. He kind of did something similar to what you're describing, and he studied like mental health and how it impacts youth, like even specifically in the criminal justice system. And so what would happen was, say like a younger kid gets mixed up into some of the wrong business and he ends up getting caught by the police and he has to go to court, and maybe he doesn't have like parents or a guardian that is the best role model for him, and he's just kind of like feels alone in that process. And you're going to court as an adult is stressful, so going there when you're a child and you don't really understand what's going on, you don't really understand the repercussions of your actions, it can be like pretty stressful. So his role, the guy that I knew, his goal or his role was to kind of work with them and just kind of walk them through the process of what was going on. And because he had a background in mental health, he actually ended up not like not like formally, but like kind of informally consoling them and counseling them through this kind of like process of just like, okay, we have to get you some clean clothes, we have to get you kind of like a haircut, these are some of the actions that have led you to this position right now, and these are some of the real life consequences you may be facing. However, like we're just going to kind of work through this step by step and just go through the process. And sometimes you'd be really stressed because you don't always get the outcomes that you want. But sometimes he would come into the gym and he would just be glowing because he was able to actually like impact someone's life and actually be able to make them feel like not only was someone there for me, but someone was helping me through a process that I was really uncomfortable in. And they just like haven't felt that before.
Yeah, and like that's awesome. Like that's something like I've always wanted to do. It's like almost either one to one or exactly similar. It's yeah, like it's just something that I've always wanted to do. Like it's you get that sense of joy and like pride, and it really does really affect the rest of your day or even a month in a sense. Like that's the one thing that will make you glow. And I know that for a fact. Like I was almost to that like the younger youth who was at the gym, I was almost like that person for them. Like informally, I was like counseling them. I was telling them, hey, you're looking good. You're getting in shape. Trying to be that support service, like supporter of them for like, because I know a lot of people don't generally have those guardians or even friends or anybody to really get that sense of support or almost like comfort. So like I personally loved and I enjoyed all the time like I spent with them, just like seeing them grow, telling them like, hey, do you need any like, like are you okay on food? Do you need to get some like new clothes? How are you doing? And then even just like I know like giving them like the free shirts we had at the work, like I know I shouldn't have done that, but like there was something personally that I was just like, I could see the joy and like him having something new. And like for me, just seeing like what I still keep in contact with him, but seeing the position he is in now, it really, that's what's something that I keep very close to like my heart, just because from seeing him from where he began and just seeing where he is now, it's a whole new person. And I'm more than happy to have that in my life.
Yeah, that's unreal. And it can happen like super large scale and it can happen like kind of smaller scale. And it's no matter what, I feel like it's like super rewarding because I even have like a family member who does something like similar to that where like my older sister, shout out to my older sister, but she works like kind of with like a job right now where she's helping out like children or like young adults with like kind of know like they're either in the foster system or they're like kind of just getting out of it, but they just like kind of, she just helps them with like getting to doctor's appointments on time, like whether she has to go to their house and pick them up and take them to the doctor's appointment or help them make a resume and help them get a job. Like these are certain things that it doesn't seem like if you were to tell someone like, hey, I helped someone make a resume today, like it doesn't seem like the biggest thing, but for that kid, like that could be the one thing that they've been stressed about the most is like, how am I even going to get a job? Like how am I going to take care of myself? And so like if you can kind of like supply them with like not only the means to do it and like show them how they can do it, but like the confidence to be like, hey, I actually did this. Like, I feel like that's like such a rewarding thing. It's huge, man.
Yeah, and like I'll give like major props to your sister on that, because like it's like when people talk about it and such, like yeah, like exactly how you said it, others might just be like, it's just a resume, it's just a piece of paper, or it's just like set and so thing, like something that seems so easy to us and like such, like for them it could be like their entire like world, because that's what separates them from either being out on the streets or living on couch to couch to maybe them finally getting their first like apartment, or them having a place to live and have like food and shelter on their back. Like it's a huge thing, and I don't think I guess a lot of people take that for granted, that like of it being an easy life. And it's just because it's just comes down to how we live and how and what level of access we have. And that would be, I guess, in a sense of just acknowledging like our own level of privilege, because even if we could say that we don't feel privileged, but like it is a complete lie if you say we don't have it easier than some like people, because some people, they just need that help, they just need that confidence and support to get maybe even a job, or even the support to just like maybe finish their college or maybe finish their high school education. So I think like I would give your sister mad props for that, because a lot of people really don't explore or share that. So to even have one person do that, it means a lot to a lot of people.
Yeah, so if she ever listens to this, if you're ever listening to this, we're giving you props right now.
Mad props.
That's sick, man. Yeah, so like for like what do you think like for the average person like who doesn't work a job like that? Like say for myself, like my day job, I'm a carpenter. I do home renovations, I do restoration. On the weekends I work at a restaurant. So like how can I kind of make that impact, or how could I kind of make like if I were to interact with someone that you're kind of working with, like say like a troubled youth or a teenager going through something rough, like how can I make an impact on somebody?
Well, like the biggest thing I would say is like it really comes down to the very first step, and that's like having this like foundation of like shame and shunning, because I know for a lot of people, and I can say the same thing for like how people treat like some homeless people. Like if you ever, so I know I'm guilty of it, and I feel terrible when I do it, but I've been trying to get in that position where I can, stem away from it. But like if a homeless person like walked up to me saying, do you have change or do you have anything like that? I know for a fact, and a lot of people as well, they would just ignore them, or they would just like turn a blind eye and then just walk by. And that's the problem, because we have this ideology of, we need to stay away from those people. We need to, like, it's an embarrassment to be seen with them, or like it's just something that's taboo. We shouldn't. We've been told during like grade school and such, like I know for a fact, and I've seen it with my nieces, because they're going through that stage in the education where I know for a fact that everybody has gone through something similar at this point. But you ever like remember attending those like assemblies, and then the teachers or the principals telling you, hey, don't interact with these like type of kids or these type of people because they're bad, and that you shouldn't be associating with yourselves with them because it's shameful. And like that's something that you don't think about it as a kid, but then it really becomes a staple in your foundation. And that's when that's the first step, I would say, is like trying to get rid of that notion and ideology that has been taught since like grade school, and just seeing them as a human being, not someone that you have to ignore and avoid. So I would really say like the best way to help them out is treating them like a human being, treating them as someone like you would treat a friend, because it could mean a lot to them just even having a simple hello, or having a simple like, hey, how are you doing, what do you need? So that would be the first thing I would say, and that's basically the best that everyone can do right now, because not everyone, and I know that for a lot of people, can really take those extra steps to maybe getting a more one-on-one connection with them and giving them support. But like just even a simple interaction with them, that will make their entire day, and that can completely change their thought process for the rest of the day.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense, man. And so, like, obviously there's so many reasons why, like, people get to the positions that they're in. Sometimes it's an external factor. Sometimes it's like an internal factor. Sometimes it's a combination of both. I feel like that's like kind of the most common, is like a combination of both of those things. But I noticed that like with myself, when I like am struggling, or even in the past when I was struggling quite a bit more, excuse me, I found it like really difficult to interact well with people. I could still kind of get interaction, but it wasn't the best interaction. And so because of that, like upon reflecting, like this is hindsight, I've noticed that there was a lot of opportunities, whether it be like an interaction with someone that's really, really awesome, or a job opportunity that was really cool. Like I found that it was really difficult to actually be able to notice opportunities and then act on them as well. So like if someone were to reach out for support, it's very easy to push them away and stay isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you think the answer is, or like what do you think the reason is? It could be either one. Like why do you think that happens? Or what do you think like your best advice for someone that's struggling with something like that is?
Yeah, like in that sense, like I've been in the similar boat where it's like if someone reaches out to me, and a lot of people have noticed, like I seem like a very quiet and reserved type of individual who, doesn't really, like, I like to keep this notion of independence, but I noticed that it's not a healthy, it originates from an unhealthy point of my life, where I figured that I didn't really have that support. So in those sense, like people really resort to pushing others away, just because during maybe earlier experiences in life and such, they may have had nobody, or they didn't have anybody but themselves to really get by. So I would say that's a big reason as to, why people push away from each other. But I think the thing that helps the most, and I know for myself from personal experience, what has helped me from not pushing away others who want to help me, it comes down to just really just sitting down with someone and then having them, as much as it would be annoying, is contradict your thoughts or your opinions, or even give you new ideas and such. Like even if it's going to make you angry during the moment, at the very end, I know for a fact for me, at the end of the day, I might think about that at the very end of the night, and that's when I'll kick into gear, and I'll notice what they were trying to get across, because I'm a type of person who likes to finally think about things and then personally, resonate with them by myself. So if it's with others, I might try to push them away because I don't feel comfortable, but it does stick with people. And it's a thing I've learned in like psychology. Some people completely despise therapy, but once they're home and they really self-reflect about the day, that's when you notice it kicks into gear and they completely shift them.
Yeah, so just kind of having like an open, like authentic conversation just about like whatever you have going on, kind of like without fear of like making someone else mad, but also understanding like without fear that you might get mad, you might be upset by the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
but just kind of voicing whatever truth you are dealing with. Is that right?
Exactly. Like that's the only area I would say that you can really see that personal growth. And, sometimes it will hurt when people expose your vulnerabilities and your like, your wrong ideologies and such. But like that, I would say is like the best area for growth, because then that's when you can really learn others like perceptions and things, and maybe have another outlook on life and other things.
Yeah, kind of like refine your own ideas, or kind of like be able like voice what you think, and then be able to hear someone say like, man, there's a little bit of flaws in your logic because of this and this. And maybe like that hurts to hear. Actually, you know what, it definitely hurts to hear when someone's like, yeah, you got some flaws in your logic and this is why. And then maybe you respond to it well, maybe you don't, but then at least like later on, like you said, like maybe that night or the next day, or it could take a week or months or sometimes years, what they said might actually sink in. It might actually seep in.
Yeah. And like I would completely agree with that too. Like I've had these moments in my days where like I could just be doing something and I'm not even thinking about the concept, but suddenly I'll just get hit with this wave of like euphoria, and I'll just be like, oh, I see. Like I finally get it now. I see where they're coming from, and like, and even if I maybe don't interact with them anymore, I will be forever grateful for that moment, because I know at least at some point it was sticking in the back of my head to enough for me to finally see it and put all the light into it.
Yeah. So like if I had say like a friend who like that we've always been close friends, and all of a sudden they start being a little bit more isolated, they're kind of sticking by themselves, or maybe we don't talk as much, like what would be like a way I could pull them out of like a dark spot if they were a little bit like reserved on wanting to be social about it?
Like for that sense, and like I could apply that to myself just because I'm very reserved a lot of the times, even though I don't show. I know I used to not show it. Maybe when I used to work with you, or even online, people don't think I seem like very bubbly, but in reality, that's just like something that occurs every now and then. It's not the thing. But from what's worked for me and what has worked for others is don't be that type of person who is like, hey, why are you doing this and that? Like, don't put them to shame in a sense, because I know a lot of people say like, oh, all you did was just lay in bed and do nothing all day. Isn't that just like a waste of your day? Like, I've had people tell me that, and I've been told by others that they've been told that, and like nothing hurts more than just getting someone to further like reinforce this idea that, yeah, you wasted your day or you're doing nothing, and you this point of times it hurts a lot, and you can really like unintentionally add to their the stress and like the down point in their life. So what I would really say that would help people, and if you like had a personal friend, is instead of just like maybe shaming them or further emphasizing what they're feeling, like, yeah, sure, like acknowledge the fact that they're feeling like this and understand where they are, but also tell them like what do you need, or why are you feeling like this, what can I personally do for you, even if it's a simple like maybe a text message or a phone call, just asking them what they need means a lot. And I know that means a lot of the world for me when I get a simple text message or a phone call from a friend or a concerned individual is just saying, hey, are you okay? Do you need anything from me? Like, let's not disregard what you're feeling. Let's try to understand and reach a conclusion and where I can support you and not feel like you're having this sense of like embarrassment or shame from like me or being able to share your things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, just, yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually. And I kind of catch myself doing that sometimes with my friends. If I notice they like are kind of just like sitting around all day, or they tell me like, hey, I had a terrible day. Like I just like wasn't able to move around a lot. I was stuck in my room. I was stuck in my head, basically. I do have a tendency to just kind of think, well, hey, when I feel like that, I just go for a bike ride, or I go to the gym, or I, go to work, and I try my best to make other people laugh or smile. So like I always kind of just like instantly, I almost like don't even listen to what they're saying. I'm just like, yeah, try going to the gym, man.
Yeah.
Like, and it is a really insensitive way to deal with it, because it's like, I don't know why all the time the answers seem so redundant or minuscule, but I feel like a lot of the answers always are things that sound almost like hokey. Like, oh, I don't think that that's going to work. Like, oh, you're telling me that I'm super depressed and I can't even find the motivation to continue living my life, but going for a walk every day is supposed to help me. Like, that's supposed to help me. Or if I stop eating chips and I eat a banana, or an apple or an orange, like that's going to help me. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of get in that mindset of just like I wonder why the solutions that we hear about are always solutions that we don't think are going to help us.
Yeah, like I've been guilty of that too, and that's something I've been also like dealing with myself, like with my self-reflection. Like I always catch myself like sometimes, like it's definitely got better now, but I know when I first started, I'd always be like, oh, just go for a run, go do some exercise, or hey, just go do this outside, or you know, or just have a better day tomorrow. And it's really insensitive when you think about it, because you're just disregarding their wants or their emotions. So like, yeah, it's a problem, and like I can guarantee for a fact a lot of people that I know do the same thing. And it's just something that it's almost like a reflex in a sense, like, oh, you hear something sad or bad, we don't want to talk about that, we want to talk about the good things and what you can do. But then we're really just putting the actual problem just aside. We're just tucking it under the rug, and then just, it's kind of like if you have crumbs in the kitchen and you're just going to sweep them under the rug, it doesn't solve your problem. You're just adding more to the pile of issues. And I think that's just mainly just from, again, like from like our grade school and like how we were taught as kids and younger, just being like, hey, be happy, do this and all that. Don't be sad. And I guess I really say that that's like a toxic ideology that we, still teach and learn. Just, be happy. It's not okay to be sad. And like, I think that's a big issue of why we resort to like, saying the simple solutions, but it's not always that simple. We need to like acknowledge our emotions and like our sadness at times.
Yeah, 100%. And like, that's kind of a lot of the struggle that I had growing up, was not just not acknowledging it, but kind of in denial of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was just I noticed myself doing certain things and I saw people's reactions. So I was like, oh, I better not say anything like that again, or I better not, feel like this again. And so I almost like forced myself to always like kind of be either like the center of attention or the class clown. Like, and, after I finished school and after I was like kind of in the real world, that behavior continued. Right. And it wasn't really until this year, and I'm 25 now. So it wasn't until this year when I started to realize, you don't always have to be that center of attention. It is okay to just like have days where you don't want to chat with people. It is all right to feel like garbage sometimes. You feel like shit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like, yeah, for me, like I didn't really get rid of that notion or ideology until like maybe barely, like I want to say in my first year university, but if I really think about it, I don't think I really tapped into myself and who I am until like maybe the end of my third year of university, which would be, you know, just last year or so. And really, I'm really tapping into it now this year, just because, you know, I really want to have that change. So, you know, it's hard. It's, you know, it's a process for some people. Some people it takes longer, and some people are just quick learners and quick, like, people to just change.
Yeah. Like since I've known you, like you've always kind of had like this friendly demeanor. You always want to like just be friendly. When I first met you, you came up and introduced yourself to me. And it was like kind of like my first day at that location, well, back at that location because I originally worked there. But like, what do you think, like what drives you, if you don't mind me asking, to kind of like be like this? What drives you to kind of, you know, study the field that you're in? What made you into the person that when that kid came in and told you about those issues, you genuinely wanted to help? What do you think shaped you into that?
I would personally say for me, it was like finally being able to acknowledge and reflect and accept my personal experiences that I went through. Because I really think that for the thing that drives me the most is, you know, as it sounds almost like a sad topic, but, you know, I don't want to just like not acknowledge it, because, you know, I don't want to have that ideology anymore of being like, I shouldn't talk about these things, because, you know, that's a taboo ideology and such. And that's what I'm trying to get rid of. But like, for me, the personal thing that motivated me and drove me to, like, you know, wanting to help that individual was acknowledge and reflect my own personal, like, my pain, my own personal, like, my low points in life that I had growing up. Because when you think about your own, like, events, you don't really think about them, or you try to avoid them. But when you finally get someone who is either who is that age, who's going through what you went through at that time, or even now, and is just trying to be open with you, that's when it really makes you, like, reflect on it. And that's when it gives you that moment of, like, almost bliss, because you get to realize that someone else went through what you went through, or is going through what you went through. And it really becomes almost like a personal, like a personal goal of yours, because then you don't want maybe a younger individual, someone who's your age, to keep going through what pain or, like, experiences you went through, because nobody really should go through these sort of events. And, like, if there's any way that I can help to personally guide them and be assistance to, you know, what brought me to this point of life, then of course I want to share that with people, because I know how dark it can get. And I know a lot of my, like, friends that I used to have, unfortunately, aren't here anymore because of it. So I just want to be that, like, guidance in order to, you know, get people to have this goal and outcome in, like, where I am now and compared to what I was. Because I always tell people, like, you can do it. It's a tough road, but if I was personally able to get through it, I would want to do my damn best to just help you and get through your goal as well.
Yeah. Why do you think that it's always so easy to give other people advice on their issues, but it's so difficult for us to kind of reflect on our own issues and see, like, what we need to do for ourselves?
I personally think, and I've learned from my courses, like, we're so easy to give advice to others because we're not exposing our own vulnerabilities. We're not acknowledging our own issues. We are acknowledging their issues and such by thinking what we think is best for them. So when it comes to it, like, you never really want to see your friend or a personal family member, anyone in general, you never want to see them upset. You always want to be that support system for them. And I know some maybe don't think that, but, you know, I never want to see one of my friends in an upset mood or, like, in a very dark path. So I always want to be that sense of, like, guiding light for them. Like, and it's also a concept that I've learned in psychology, where it's like, we want to be their savior in a sense, but that's a problem. That's a problem in society right now, is we want to be that hero that, you know, changes them. And then once they get changed, then that's it. We just don't help them anymore. But when it comes to us working on ourselves and, like, trying to figure out what we need, we don't want to do it or think about it, because we want to think of ourselves as being that, you know, positive outlook, or being like that individual who has it all set in life and is more than happy. But so that's why I think a lot of the times it's just we're not comfortable with exposing our vulnerabilities and even just acknowledging that we have flaws. So that's why I think we're so easy to like give advice, but never advice to ourselves.
Yeah, that's huge, man. That's absolutely huge. And I think it's really difficult to not just admit that you have flaws, but expose the flaws that you're not like super open about. Like expose the flaws that you're almost embarrassed about. Because there's always like kind of that elephant in the room with a lot of people that are struggling. Like there's always like a problem where it's like, look, like, you know, I'm dealing with this and I know I'm dealing with this, but I don't know why we're not talking about it. It's like kind of weird. I was going to actually go back because I remember what I was just kind of like clarifying like what you said. And there was something that was interesting when I asked you about what your goal is when you're done with your education. And you said, well, you know, I don't have like a definitive, like one way thing that I want to go with. It's just kind of like like a field that I know I want to work in. And I know for myself, I kind of feel similar, and I have felt really similar in the past. And that's something that makes me super anxious. And I just feel like for you, it seems like the fact that you were able to just say that so confidently and so like, I'm just going to go and like, maybe I'll get a job that I'm like super interested in, but it sounds like you're just prepared to go with the flow. Like, what would you say to someone that doesn't really know exactly where they're going and they kind of feel anxious about that? Because that makes me anxious.
Yeah, and like when it comes to like I know for a lot of people it seems like I'm very confident in what I want to do, and like I want to say partially yes and partially no. Like I still have those lingering thoughts of anxiety of like, hey, I'm about to finish school. I really need to figure out like I need to figure out my stuff before I'm like in like the real world now. But like for me, what's really helped and to give myself some sort of confidence or like guidance in my life was just, you know, acknowledge those anxieties, acknowledge that feeling of like, I don't know what I'm going to do, or I'm stressed, because a lot of times what has helped me become really guided and like grow and feel like what like I guess aware of what I want to do in life was just by accepting that stress and accepting that anxiety, and just being able to, this one has been a big one for me, but just being able to tell others and be like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing in my life yet. I don't know what I want to do. And then just having someone else to share and talk about it with, it's almost like a mentor, like, or like a, just another supporter or another person who's going to walk along the path with you as much as they can, just so they can give you some sort of guidance and feeling that you're not alone in this life, and that, you know, not everyone knows what they want to do. And that's what's really helped with like the anxiety of like, you know, not knowing what I'm going to do, or maybe having an idea, just because I understand and I know that it's not something that's uncommon, that, you know, sometimes it's okay to be a little confused and lost, you know, sometimes it takes some time for you, but when you do find it, you know, at least you get to understand and remember that, you know, someone also was, you know, able to understand it with you and help you as much as they could. So I think it's really comes down to just acknowledging how you feel and like your stress and anxiety, because I'll be real. It's like, it's terrifying. It's like, you know, the world's huge, and, you know, how can we know what we want to do until we, you know, get in that position?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that kind of highlights as well, like it's important to try so many different things, because you're going to run into things that maybe you thought you wanted to do and then you end up hating it, or you run into things where you think that you're going to hate it, but you actually end up, you know, finding some aspect of it that's super rewarding for you.
Yeah. And I would say that's completely true as well. Cause like, I know when I first started my university and such, I had this idea of like, hey, I want to do this and that. And then when I really looked into it and focused in those courses, I was like, man, this is boring. This is bland to me. I hate it. I don't want to do this. This is a waste of my time. And, you know, I was upset at it when I reflected back on it, when I first was going through the motions. Like, I was like, man, I wasted my time. But I almost come to the point and conclusion in life where I feel like nothing really is a waste of time. Like, it's all trial and error. And, you know, for some people, it's it's a longer thing, but whatever it takes to get to your, happy place, I would say that it's all going to be worth it at the end, because, you're never going to know until, you're in that spot.
Did you drop those courses or did you complete them?
I that's something I've noticed for myself personally. I've never been someone who wants to drop something. And I've been told by a lot of people being like, why did you just do a course you hate and something like that? And it's been something that's conflicting for me, because I've noticed that with jobs too. Sometimes I won't leave a job even if I dislike it completely, because I feel like I need to accomplish it. But my I guess rationality of it was, if I can complete something I don't like in life, then perhaps when the next obstacle in life occurs, I have that will and like strength to be able to do the uncomfortable in order to get to my comfort zone.
That's beautifully put, man. That was like literally what I was going to ask about. Did you ever have like a course, like, because this is kind of something that I've felt quite a lot. Like, did you ever have a course where maybe it wasn't boring, it was like really fulfilling for you, but perhaps like the professor you didn't get along with, or you found him to be boring, or you were like, hey, I just can't learn from this guy? Like, did you have ever experience like that?
Oh yeah, tons of times. Like there's been so many times and so many semesters where I'm like, I love the course, but when it comes to the actual like professor, or maybe the TAs, I'm just like, this is boring, this is bland. I'm not feeling that sense of enjoyment in the course that I personally like a lot. So there've been tons of times where I've been in that situation.
Yeah. And like, how did you kind of react to it?
For me, the best way for me to react to it was, I, instead of just sulking and just being like, oh, this class is going to suck, and it's going to be ruined for the rest of the semester, I really reached out to other students. And this was, before like the online stuff had happened. So it was much easier for me, but like I would reach out to other students and like ask, what their thoughts on it. And like, if they had the same thoughts, then I would be like, oh, perfect. Then, now I have someone that I can almost have as like a social learning group, like where we can both all share our experiences and all come to an enjoyment of what, we can all get this through together, and, make the class fun for ourselves, even if, maybe one portion isn't as fun.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to a lot of things in life, because that kind of covers both aspects of it. Like, sometimes you are going to be in certain positions where you're in the place you want to be, but not every circumstance for you is lined up properly. And
Yeah.
it's really easy to get lost in that and say, well, if I had a good professor, then maybe I could have pushed through that. Or sometimes you're in the opposite. Maybe like the company's good, but the course that you like is not the best, right? Like, or the course that you're in is not something that you're interested in. Sorry. And so like, it just kind of speaks to the sense that, like, circumstances aren't always going to be perfect for you, but that's a good metaphor for it, right? Like, hey, I have this class that I'm enjoying, but the professor's ruining it for me. And it's kind of really powerful. I think that that's going to be a successful factor for you, where a key to your success is the fact that like instinctually you were like, okay, we can push through this. Like, I'm not letting this ruin my experience. I wanted to get something out of this, and I'm going to get something out of this.
Yeah. And that's something I've always just held true to myself. Like, I never want to think of something as like, oh, this is terrible. Like, I want to see it as like a challenge and something as a learning opportunity for me to grow, because sometimes you really need that certain like situation, and where it's like, it's an awful situation, or it's like completely bland and boring. But if you can make it, worth it, and you can make the best out of it, then it becomes so much more satisfying and accomplishing for you. And it really gives you that outlook in life, and where, it keeps you, for me, it really influenced the whole can do like attitude of like not wanting to back down from something that I don't enjoy, because, it's a different sense of pride and like accomplishment when you really push through something that's, maybe uncomfortable for you.
Yeah. And it also is true that, circumstances are never really going to be perfect in your life. Like, you could get your dream job, you could have your dream house, you could have your dream, like partner in life, you could have everything set up, but you're always going to have like a coworker maybe, or a business partner, or a customer, or an employer or a friend of a friend, like maybe like your partner has a friend that you have to see often. Like there's always going to be something. And being able to navigate around that and still enjoy what you're doing and still kind of get what you're looking to get out of a situation, I feel like is such a, it's a rare skill. Like it's something that even like I struggle with it a lot, even though I know the concept. It's very easy for me, like if I'm annoyed with a coworker or if I'm annoyed with, a certain part of my job, then it's very easy for me to find myself, like, oh, maybe I should quit. Maybe I should find a new job. Maybe I should navigate my way around this. Maybe like I could get them fired. Maybe like I need to argue with them so they understand my point more. Like it's something that it creates like a lot of toxicity in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I feel like that's such a useful skill to have, is to be able to see past those distractions and still get what you're looking to get out of a situation.
Yeah, and like that's something that for me, I won't lie, it took me a long time to really wrap my head around it, and I still struggle with it at times. Like there's times where I'll complain and be like, I can't do this, or I couldn't accomplish this sense of like maybe goal or task because of these circumstances. But it wasn't really until I got told by, I think, one of our upper management in our old company. It was like, I think it was like a quote. He says like, if like when it comes to your goals and tasks and outlook and things, you should never blame it on the situations and circumstances. It really all comes down to you and your mindset. Because like it can be a rainy day and you could blame the rain or like the weather for, you not doing anything and not going outside or doing what you wanted to do. But it also comes down to the difference between you not doing anything due to the rain or you not doing anything because you didn't want to do anything about it. You didn't want to do the things that could have been done during the day, regardless of the outcome. So that's something that I've kind of personally kept to myself. And when I used to work with the old company, I would always tell the other, like, the entry level positions in our old job, being like, hey, did you not finish a certain task because this situation, or did you not complete it because you didn't try and do it for yourself?
Yeah, because it always seems like there's some sort of like a circumstance we could blame. Like you could say like, yeah, like you said, like maybe if your goal was just to go on a walk or go on a jog, and it's like, well, it's raining today. Well, tomorrow your feet might hurt. Well, the next day you might be like kind of stressed for time, or the next day you might, there's always going to be something, and just kind of to be able to push through that is like huge, man. It's like, yeah, like you said, it's something I still struggle with sometimes, because it's not like we're making excuses, because sometimes circumstances do limit you. But still, to be able to kind of not let that crush you, or just to be able to see past that and look at like, well, what can I achieve?
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
Yeah, and it's something that for myself, with me interacting with other youths and so on, like that's something I've noticed, and it's always very prominent in the younger, like in the young individual. And it sounds funny for me to say younger, just because it's only like I'm only a few years apart from those people. But yeah, it's there's always going to be certain circumstances that will stop you from doing something. But when it isn't those type of situations, then it really helps finding that extra strength or will to be able to make the most out of something regardless of the situation.
Yeah. And so like when you say what this is kind of like a weird question. When you say like make the most of a situation, like what are you meaning like get the most amount of happiness from it? Are you like kind of like learning the most amount of knowledge from it? Like what does that mean to you, like to get the most out of a situation?
For me, like getting the most out of a situation, it's all subjective really. Like I could say make the most out of a situation of being happy, or get the most out of a situation of being sad. Like whatever you need in order to have that sense of, feeling fulfilled or satisfied in a certain area. That's what I necessarily mean. So like for me to give like a certain example, like, I recently had this discussion with someone about COVID and the concept of like social distancing and everything like that. And it came down to them saying like they feel like
I just
bored.
choked on my water. I don't have COVID. That was just me. We're talking.
All good. I mean, we're far away from each other, so there's no way we should get it. Hopefully.
Yeah, no kidding. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's just kind of
No
funny. You were
worries.
talking about COVID and I coughed. I just
No.
took a sip of water, went down the wrong pipe, man.
We'll take it. I'll take your word for that. But yeah, it was like the whole. They just saw that it was such a sad situation, and like they were annoyed with it. And I wasn't. And like I know earlier in life I would have been like, oh, just switch it up, do something else. But I've now got to the point where like, if like someone tells me, yeah, I'm in a shitty situation, then I will be more than willing to tell them, acknowledge that shitty situation. Like, yeah, feel annoyed, feel angry, feel whatever you need to feel in order to get past that barrier of like of not wanting to share or like acknowledge what you're going through. Because once you make the most out of maybe a shitty situation, that's when you can, maybe grow and figure a way of like coping with it. Or like if you're in a very happy mood and like happy situation and you really want to maybe express your emotions or like just like sense of happiness and whatever means possible, like then go for it. Like don't feel ashamed, don't feel like you need to keep quiet about it. Like if you need to like scream and yell about whatever, then go ahead, like make the most out of it, so that way you can feel satisfied with the situation, and that you're not later in the end of the day feeling like, damn, I could have been more expressive about this, or I should have done this more. Like once you make the most out of it, it's like you feel satisfied. You don't feel like you're having these thoughts of like, I should have done this or I should have done that.
Yeah, I actually had a similar kind of like breakdown recently, and like 2020 has been a stressful year for everybody. But where I work, especially with construction, I mean, working in the restaurant on the weekends, that was definitely impacted by the restrictions and stuff that were put on to us. And but like with construction, it wasn't. So for a long time, I felt like I was like business as usual. Like I could still go to work. I wasn't going to the gym, but I was working out outside. I would go for runs and bike rides. And, I was spending a lot of time reading. So I felt like I was like taking care of myself and doing everything I could do. And so for the longest time, it wasn't I didn't understand, or I didn't recognize or observe that it was impacting me mentally, right? And then the other day, I guess it just kind of like built up enough that it was noticeable for me. And I was talking to one of my friends about it, and I was like literally tearing up as I was writing this to him, but I was texting him and I was just saying like, it's a weird time right now, man. Like
Yeah.
there's a weird, like, like kind of stress, and there's like almost like tension all the time right now when you go out, whether it's different problems going on in the world right now. Like it just feels like there's so much negativity and so much hate and so much there's people that are yelling that our freedoms are being taken away. There's people that are yelling that other people aren't being responsible enough. There's people that are just kind of like, there's always someone that's pointing a finger at another group. And it just overwhelmed me that day. I was just like, man, why can we not just love, man? Like, why can we not just love? And my friend replied to me, he was like, look, man, I think you're reading into a lot of situations a little bit too much. I think that what you have to do to kind of achieve the level of happiness that you had and what you were looking for right now is just wake up every single day and try and be the best version of yourself. Like, don't pay attention to what you're hearing about, to pay attention to what you observe on a daily basis, the people that are around you, and how can you make them a little bit happier? Because then at that point, you won't feel like you're surrounded by the negativity. You'll feel like, you have that like kind of core happiness. You're taking care of the people around you, but you're also just kind of trying to be the best person that you possibly can. So not recognizing like the flaws that you have or the flaws that you see in the world, but recognizing more like what can you do to make that better.
Yeah.
And after talking to him, I was like, I was tearing up, crying. And I like read the text messages the next day, and I was like, man, what an amazing friend. Like it was it was kind of a wake up call for me.
Yeah, and that's like a really powerful thing to like even like you know share and such because like yeah like I get it like it's a hard time and a lot of times right now I for myself I'm guilty of it like I will focus on the negative aspects of things the negative situations the flaws and like it becomes overwhelming to the point where yeah you will reach a breaking point and where you just feel overwhelmed and you just shut yourself off but like yeah I've had conversations and like personally for me like I don't feel ashamed or like you know like like you know just bad about me sharing this but like for me personally like it's been a rough year for me lately and like I've got acknowledged to the point where like you know I'm not ashamed to like go see a therapist and such and like you know have someone to I can talk to that's unbiased and like willing to help and they told me the same thing as what your friend said like they told me focus on the good parts of your day focus it's not bad to focus like maybe think about the negative aspects in life at times and like the overwhelming things but like acknowledge them at least but don't put your whole day on it or else it will get to like that breaking point like focus on the whatever makes you happy and whether it be making others happy whether it makes making yourself happy like really do what makes what's going to make you like the better version of yourself because once you're at that point then the next day you're gonna want to keep living off that moment.
Yeah, man. That's huge. That's absolutely huge actually. And it's so difficult to do because we are kind of always surrounded either through the media or through social media or our friends. There just seems to kind of always be like a highlight of what's going on that's negative. And like you said, you do have to observe those things because how are you going to fix the things that are negative without actually noticing them first? But it seems like it's always like a one or the other thing. It's like, hey, man, why are you only focusing on the positive when there's all these things that are happening that are negative? And that can make you feel guilty because you're like, well, I'm just trying to focus on the positive. But then there's also the other side where it's like, well, why do you always focus on the negative all the time when there's all these beautiful parts?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it seems to be, again, like kind of we've done like a full rotation. It's almost like what we were saying in the beginning. Like it's always a constant balancing act
Yeah.
of like, well, am I neglecting the things that are negative just to look at the beauty? And how is that going to impact me? Because then they're going to build up and it's going to impact me a lot more detrimentally later. Or am I just focusing on the beautiful sides? Or I mean, just am I just focusing on the negative sides and ignoring the beautiful sides? And then you're not being grateful and you're not being kind of, you know, you're being selective with what you're looking at.
Yeah, and like yeah, I completely like get what you're saying and such because like I know for a while and for almost a big portion of my life, I wouldn't like when I had my with my former partner, like I was always like trying to focus on the good parts of life. Like I remember I used to catch myself and reflecting back on it. I'd always say like, why are you so negative? Or let's not talk about the bad things in life. Let's just focus on the good parts in life. And then I didn't realize until after it and that you know, I was just like shutting or like just like, you know, pushing it to the side, like the negative aspects in life to the point that when I finally sat down by myself and, you know, when I was alone, I got completely overwhelmed with all the negative parts because all I would focus on was the good parts. And then as soon as some small negative portion, you know, just kind of resonated with me, then everything spilled out. And I noticed it was an unhealthy method of like bottling things up. And I completely am one to say like, you know, you shouldn't always just focus on the good. Sometimes it's good to focus on the bad and like, you know, you shouldn't just like like just bottle everything in. And I could say the same for someone who's just always seeing things negatively. Like if you never see the positive things and you're just always bottling it up, you'll never really get to that point. And it's a lot harder when you do that way because when you just bottle everything that might make you happy in times, it's going to be so hard to find that one thing that will spark you to feel a sense of joy. And that's why some people get into very dark paths and such. So it's like a cycle. It's like a constant loop. You're always going around this little notion of whether you're either going to be happy all the time or you're always going to be sad, but it's never like you're never acknowledging both things. And that's something I've struggled with a lot. And I know a lot of people struggle with. They never want to see both sides.
Yeah, that's huge. Like this is something that like I'm actually really happy about this. This is my second biggest takeaway in this whole thing is like I noticed with myself, like I am always it's always like a one or the other thing. I'm either like always focusing on just the positive sides, and anytime someone comes to me with an issue, I'm not even listening. I'm like, oh, okay, that sucks, terrible, 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 but look at how beautiful the sun is, and look at how great, oh, we have like our health, we have, family, we have all these things, and like I only focus on the good sides. And then there's days where it's the flip side, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, Vancouver's such an expensive place to live. We have to deal with like extremely hiked up rent. We have to deal with like, expensive gas prices, expensive phone bills, expensive auto insurance, and like it just starts to pile up. And like I'm noticing with myself that I am always like it's either a one or the other thing. I'm either only focusing on the good or I'm only focusing on the bad. Like, what do you think like a solution is that for that? Because there does have to be a balance.
Yeah, and it's completely right. It's not wrong to say that there shouldn't be a balance, but like it can become like an unhealthy habit of like just being on one side, and it's not always true to yourself and like to others of like always showing like a front of being happy or a front of being sad, because there are things in life that give us joy or sadness, and it's completely normal. But something that has helped with me, and from what I've personally told others who I've interacted with, is like I learned this from like my own like personal like support sessions and such. Is they've told me like sit down one day and like write down either in a personal notebook or even on your phone on the notes, like write down a list of your emotions or things you did in the day. So like when I used to work at the old job, I would describe being like, oh, I woke up mad or sad because I didn't want to go to work. And then when I was at work, whatever interactions or things that made me happy or sad, I would write it down. And I would write them on like this like T, like almost like a T chart, and like this being the good thoughts and this being the bad thoughts. And I would just write them all down. And by the end of the night, I would just sit down, look at it all, and just, really see, where I was at in the one day, and then just constantly keep reflecting on it every single day and comparing it at the very end of the week. Because then you could really see like, perhaps, it's not always all bad. It's sometimes good, and it makes you almost satisfied and happy with yourself. Because for me, I used to really think negatively and like pessimistically until I read my like my journal entries of like how I felt. And then I noticed, I'm like, hey, I actually had a lot of good moments this week. So, I'll give myself props for that, and that will continue to, keep me like balanced and satisfied with where I am. So I really think just writing these own little journals and not being scared to write the bad parts and the good parts.
Yeah, that's huge, man. I'm a pretty big proponent for journaling. I really do appreciate it quite a bit. It's a skill that I just learned. Would have been like 2018. Yeah, when I just left the location that you and I were working together at, and I went to the next location. I remember there was a day where I was just feeling scrambled in my brain and I couldn't focus. So I like went to the Walmart right beside us and just bought a notebook, and I started writing down all the thoughts I had and all the things that I felt like I needed to do. And it just like gave me such good closure the second I closed that book. It was like, oh, we finally did kind of organize our thoughts a bit more. So I'm pretty huge on journaling, man. I really do advocate for it, and I think more people should do it, whether, like you said, whether it's in your phone, whether it's like a voice, maybe you record your voice saying it to yourself, maybe you talk to a friend, maybe you're writing it down, like however you're doing it, but definitely reflection in that way is huge.
Yeah, I completely advocate for like self-reflection and like just like documenting. And that's something I've learned just from personal experiences, from like being told by like support services, and also in like my own like classes and such, and as like being a researcher and such. They really tell you keep a journal, because you can reflect on the positives, you can reflect on your vulnerabilities, and then that's where you can really be willing to change. Because once you see where you're maybe lacking in, or where you can change that, or when you see what you're doing well, and then it gives you a sense of joy and pride, and it keeps you motivated to keep journaling for the, the remainder of your time.
That's huge, man. Well, we've been talking for about an hour and 40 minutes now. We're past 11 o'clock in the morning now. I think we connected like just after 9:30. So we're going to wrap this up. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I was even late for this. But one thing I don't do is my own outros. So you're going to do the outro today. You can do a little shout out of your Instagram one more time. But I just want you to share. The one requirement is you have to share a positive message for the people. So you're in the hot seat now. I'm passing the microphone back to you. You got to share a positive message, and then we'll say peace out.
Peace. All right, I got it, man. Really on the spot now. Okay. I mean, the positive like message I want to say just to everyone, and like I would say for myself, is like, if you're going through a bad moment in time, or you feel like you have nobody that you can, maybe resort to, sometimes it's okay to just, acknowledge that, and sit down by yourself, maybe write it down, draw, do whatever you have to do. If it means you need to maybe, I don't know, go and break something, or like maybe a plate or something. I know a lot that's very therapeutic for some, but like do whatever you got to do to acknowledge your emotions, and then, continue growing. So, just feel free to like reach out to someone, or even just do your own thing. Like, don't feel ashamed of what, makes you happy or gives you a sense of relief, because in the end of the day, the best teacher and the best support system is ourself and our minds. So, don't be ashamed of who you are, and just acknowledge that for who you are. And like, if anybody ever wants to, maybe talk about it with me or anything like that, they can easily reach out to me on Instagram. Again, it's Jose Dorantes _, or, just maybe, they can connect with Mark, and then, you can give them my deets or anything like that if they don't want to talk directly to me.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. We're going to say peace out now. All right. Peace. Thank you so much, everybody.
Take care.